Good evening. This is the November 7th meeting of the Kingston Planning Board. It's 6:45 p.m. Tonight's meeting is a work session for the Planning Board. We have two main things on the agenda. The first is meeting with the Rockingham Planning Commission regarding the stormwater regulation planning assistance. And the second thing we're going to be doing this evening is reviewing and discussing the Town of Kingston zoning ordinances, rules, and regulations for warrant articles for 2024. With that in mind, I'd like to introduce the people that are here. To my left and your right, if you're watching this on TV, is Rob Tercelo, one of our members, Steve Padfield, a member, Peter Coffin, a member. I'm Lynn Merrill, I am the chair. Beside me is Robin Carter, our land use administrator, Chris Bashaw, a member, and Robin Duguay, who is our vice chair of the board, followed by Glenn Greenwood, our town planner. And the only planning board member absent this evening is Peter Bakey. So we'd like to begin the meeting by Maddie coming and introducing herself and meeting with regarding stormwater regulation planning assistance. Hi, Maddie. So Maddie,
All right, good evening, everyone. I'm Maddie Diano. I'm with the Rockingham Planning Commission. I met with this board, I believe, back in June and presented a draft of some proposed changes to the town's stormwater management standards. Since that meeting, the standards have been reviewed by Glenn and your town's engineer. I've incorporated some of those comments into a new draft, not that you have in front of you tonight, but we'll present those in a final draft after tonight's meeting. But you should have the same draft that was presented to you back in June. I also provided a summary of the major changes as a separate document, just highlighting some of the bigger changes to the town's regulations. They're not terribly different from what you originally had, but we did update a few sections. We added some additional provisions for the post-construction stormwater management standards, as well as some additional design criteria for stormwater infrastructure. Would it be helpful if I walked through the summary of major changes, or would you please? Yeah, absolutely. So I guess I'll start by saying, so Kingston's original stormwater management standards kind of combined both construction and post-construction stormwater management standards. So what I did is I kind of teased those two sections and made them two distinct sections. So the first changes you'll see start on Article 908.16, and that is on page, should be on 15 in your packet of the draft. Is that correct? Okay, that's correct. Great. So in this section, all I did was update some of the criteria and the submittal requirements for the town's erosion and sediment control plans. We updated some site design requirements for land disturbing activities during construction. I added a clause regarding the applicant's responsibility for the installation, construction, inspection, and disposition of all sediment and erosion control measures. And I also added a definition for impervious surface. So that's the first section. And the real meat of the changes start on page 19, and these are your post-construction stormwater management standards. The biggest component in this section is that section A, minimum threshold for applicability. And this is the trigger threshold that the town chooses. So projects that come in and meet this threshold would have to comply with the entirety of the stormwater management standards. Right now, Kingston has a threshold of 15,000 square feet. So any project that comes in for site plan review that disturbs 15,000 or more square feet is subject to the town's stormwater management standards. Now, I understand that the board is set with that number, and we're not looking to change that. Is that correct? Great. So that's one of the bigger items that we discussed with the post-construction stormwater management standards. In this section as well, we have some language regarding waivers from the stormwater management standards. So for projects that are maybe less than 15,000 square feet, applicants can ask for a waiver for some of these regulations. And then we just outlined some criteria that the planning board can use to consider those waiver requests. Does that make sense so far?
So,
Sure.
so while we're there, on A2, it says when exemption is granted by the planning board, the following standards shall still apply.
Yes.
So that's not giving it to our discretion, that is actually saying that we must use these,
Yes,
for
so
this
these
criteria.
Yes, thank you for that. These are the minimum stormwater management standards, very basic. You know, stormwater must be contained on the site, can't run into your neighbor's property. These are some basic stormwater management standards.
That sounds like pretty much what we have now, right? Those.
Yeah, exactly. These are really not different from what the town has now. It was a lot of reorganization and just some updating to certain sections. But yes, correct. It's essentially what you have now in your stormwater regs. The next change is in 908.16.5.b, and this is stormwater management standards for new development. So this is a lengthy section. These are all the provisions that would apply for new site plans for stormwater management. So some of the standards included are ones that promote low impact development and green infrastructure, standards that promote best management practices for salt storage. We added in a little bit more specific language regarding your drainage analysis requirements. Specifically, we added the requirement of applicants showing the calculations comparing pre and post development stormwater runoff rates and volumes based on a 1-inch rainstorm, 2-year, 10-year, 25-year, and 24-hour frequency storm. And I have the language that Kingston's regs currently says in the summary of changes. And then we added some additional standards addressing stormwater runoff with regard to groundwater recharge. A major summary. There's a lot of standards going on in this section, but those are some of the major components.
And Dennis and I met about these regulations twice, once in August and once in October, and he's very comfortable with the proposed changes that have been made and supports them. There are just a couple of sections that we've asked for changes on, and I sent those to Maddie last week, and I was gonna do a draft with our changes.
Oh, yeah.
And I'll get that over to you.
Sure.
But I couldn't do that before tonight's meeting. But not really anything substantial. Just a couple of places where it was better to change the language so that it really reflected what the town does presently and how we should do it in the future. So not anything that I believe you found any issue with when you looked at them.
No, pretty minor. Yeah, some cases, some corrections.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So everything in green is pretty much what we already have?
Kind of, yeah.
It's
pretty
reorganized?
Much. Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. So we haven't tightened or loosened any standards?
We've tightened the stormwater regs.
We've tightened them somewhat with making clear what some of the new standards would need to be.
Such as?
The ones that she just went over.
Okay.
And in some instances, we had partial information, but not, I think the 50-year storm was added to our list that we didn't require before.
10-year, 25-year, 24-hour frequency storms.
So those are standards that are presently found in the stormwater management manual for the AOT permit.
Okay.
So if you're doing a much larger development, you have to do those anyway. And we are saying that it's legitimate to do those even on smaller developments.
So for example, treating the runoff water and all of that, we currently have in our current standards?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Yeah, these standards actually are very similar to what's required for an AOT permit. The major difference is the maintenance and inspection responsibilities, which would fall on the town. So they're very, very similar to what's required of the AOT permit.
Am I reading this correctly, though, that our square foot requirement is significantly less than what's required of the AOT permit.
Correct.
And-
For the AOT permit to be triggered, its project has to be, has to disturb a cumulative 100,000 square foot more. And in the town's case, it's, it's 15,000 square feet.
But that's our present standard
Right.
as well.
So it's not gonna impact anymore.
Correct.
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 Okay.
We put some standards in for stormwater management for redevelopment activities, and that starts on page 25. That's section 908.16.5C. So we defined what a redevelopment activity would be, and then we applied this, essentially the same stormwater management standards for those types of activities. And I want to say that I saw some questions on that.
Yeah.
Section. Would you like to?
This is actually one that we're suggesting we change quite a bit.
Okay.
It's really different. We're saying here, we're gonna predicate redevelopment on the cost of a change to the development. And that cost issue is going to always become something that we really don't have a way of managing or understanding. Somebody's gonna come to us and they're gonna say, oh, the cost is this, and we're not gonna really know. So what we're proposing is that it actually becomes a redevelopment gets kicked in if there is an addition of 25% square footage change to a structure that exists. Then it will kick in, regardless of if there's more impervious surface or not. Even if all of the increased activity of that 25% was happening on already existing impervious surface, that 25% or greater means that there's more water being generated and more flow being generated, even if the impervious surface doesn't change. So we would like a crack at making sure the stormwater management that exists out there now can handle what the new redevelopment would be.
And this would be redevelopment of 15,000 square feet.
No, the 15,000 feet would already be met. This is when you're doing a redevelopment of a property where there's already impervious surface, and even if you aren't changing that impervious surface, but you are expanding the building, if you expand that building by more than 25%, then these standards apply.
So does that apply to residential as well as commercial?
This is
Just commercial,
just commercial,
making sure.
just commercial.
And multifamily.
Right, multifamily, which is commercial.
Yeah, and that's fine with me.
So just because we didn't feel comfortable that we
Sure.
would have a way of really getting to that,
Right, yeah, and yeah, a lot of communities say the same thing.
with at least not getting to it with any real specificity. So if they would likely always come in and say, oh, it's never gonna be more than 25% of an increase in the cost, because then they're not gonna have to be subjected to anything. And it's all estimates, they're all cost estimates. It seemed like a burden we shouldn't place on ourselves.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
So I've taken a stab at that language and I'll
Sure,
take it.
yeah, that's fine with me. I think the idea behind it's 908.16.5.C1B, the idea behind this principle is, you know, if you're, with the cost, is that, you know, you're redeveloping the site such that it's having, it's going to be much more economically, you know, improved. You should be paying to also improve the stormwater infrastructure on the site. That's kind of the idea behind why there's a cost component in there. But I understand, you know, that it's kind of hard to who's going to assess that and who's going to say, you know, yeah. So.
Whereas if we go by square footage, it's very clear, they're going to tell us exactly what the square footage change is.
Right.
And we're going to approve that, but understand that there's gonna be more stormwater, the potential for more stormwater management requirements. Doesn't necessarily mean it will happen, but it may.
Right, and it addresses the cause of what we're trying to mitigate here,
Exactly.
Right.
as opposed to, you know, if you build a steel building or the Taj Mahal, you know, the capital costs are going to be a whole lot bigger than the
Right.
Taj Mahal, and yet they have the same surface area.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, you want to evaluate what is gonna happen to the raindrops coming out of the sky, not
Right.
the dollars leaving the wallet.
Yeah, that would, adding another story to a building or like an office building, not exactly changing the impervious cover, but you are making a substantial change to that property. Or, conversion of a large building into multifamily units, same type of deal that we're talking about here. So, yeah. All right. And the last couple of sections I just wanted to highlight. Was the offsite mitigation allowance. This is section 908, 16.5.c.8.
Page?
Yeah.
I'm trying to find it myself.
Oh, it's at the end.
Oh, this is page 26,
Okay.
number 8, on the last point there. So this was part of the model stormwater management standards. This is saying where, the applicant has demonstrated that they can't improve the stormwater treatment on the site. This gives the applicant the option of doing some off-site stormwater management and stormwater treatment within the same watershed, except on a different site. And it gives the planning board some criteria to follow if that was an option that was discussed with an applicant and a more viable option. Does that make sense? It seems a little tough to comprehend. Again, it meets the town's goal of treating stormwater, remaining in compliance with the MS4 permit, but it gives sort of the options to allow applicants to do stormwater treatment elsewhere off-site if it's not practical on the site. That makes sense? Okay. And then the last major section change is related to stormwater management site inspections. And I believe this is where Glenn had some changes that more corresponded with what the process is now in town, and that's perfectly fine with me.
So those will be changes made on page 28.
Yes.
And Dennis and I did work on some draft language, and I'll get that along to Maddie.
So some of this is just saying that documentation related to the stormwater BMPs and the infrastructure must be recorded at the registry of deeds. This isn't an explicit MS4 permit requirement, but it is beneficial for the town to have those stormwater management plans recorded. This is also requiring that as-built drawings of the constructed stormwater management system are required to be submitted following construction, and this is an explicit requirement of the MS4 permit. And this also is saying that written inspection reports are to be submitted by the landowner to, in this case, the planning board. I think, is that what we had?
Yes.
Okay. Did we change that time frame, or did that stay the same?
Oh, that stayed the same.
Okay, great. So it's every 3 years?
Yep.
Every 3 years after receipt of the occupancy permit, just to make sure that all of the infrastructure is working properly. And then the board would have purview overlooking those inspection reports.
And Glenn, you get those and you send them straight to Dennis, right?
I do.
Yeah, so we changed
I
some
want to have
rules.
zero to do with those.
And that's the inspection report though, but we had talked about an annual report as well, which if it's sent every 3 years really isn't annual, but it's, you're there.
Well, that's one of the changes that we're.
Oh, that was a typo.
Yeah, that was, we had a problem with that too, so we're.
Yep, I took that out.
But we had talked about too, making sure that there's some sort of uniform
We're.
format for the annual reports, right?
Right, and we're going to have it read that they're still required, sorry, Adam, we're going to have it read that they're still required to do a report annually using the forms that Maddie has drafted for us. But we're not going to go on site until the 3rd year, and they're going to show us that they've done those inspection reports, and we're going to verify that whatever those inspection reports found, if they found something that needed to be addressed, that it actually got addressed.
So do those inspection reports have to be done by an engineer?
I do believe.
So they have to
that
hire an
yeah.
engineer every single year to go and do a report?
Yeah.
That's pretty burdensome.
I don't think that they will find it, so. Once the stormwater management devices are in, as long as they're maintaining them properly, that report is going to be, it's gonna be a visit, basically.
But you've still gotta pay an engineer to go
You
out
do.
and do the report.
You do.
So, Lynn, I have a question kind of in the real estate world, like when a commercial site transfers, like, where does this come up that the new owner would know that that they're forced to know that there's a stormwater management plan in effect, that they have a legal obligation to then fulfill? Or is this just kind of like, once the town sends you your notice you're in violation of not submitting it, then they find out?
Because they're requiring the report to be, the plan to be recorded at the registry, that when the title search is done on the property, they'll find that. And the attorney should be advising at that time that that needs to be followed.
And is this one of the documents our registry allows? Because they seem to restrict a lot of stuff that is allowed to be recorded these days.
No, remarkably, this, because it's not a plan. The registry has difficulty with plans if they're not survey plans. And then they have their whole checklist that
Yeah.
makes the entire process cumbersome. But no, recording of documents like this, they never have an issue with, other than making sure the first page is formatted the way they want it to be.
Okay.
And you only mess up on that, 6 times before you realize, get it right.
And what I've seen in other communities is just having that maintenance and inspection responsibility recorded on the site plan, or just a note on the site plan referencing, the stormwater management plan, but having that inspection responsibility clearly on the recorded plan and directing them to look to the
So,
town.
Chris, just to further answer your question, anyone buying a property should by their attorney or by somebody, be shown the site plan. Not all agents are the same. And therefore, very often, they don't receive a copy of the site plan, don't even know a site plan exists when they buy the property, because they're not buying something big or, expansive, and they haven't, it's a mom and pop, like most of our businesses here. They don't have a clue that something like that's even required.
And that's my concern, is like, the person who's new to the business world, or just starting their business, they get kind of blindsided by this stuff, because I had no idea. I'm sitting there thinking about trying to figure out financing and hire employees and how I'm going to make this work, not that I have a site plan that I have to follow. And in addition to the site plan, we've got now a stormwater management plan that has to have to hire somebody to look at every year. It's a lot for a small business owner to grasp that's not experienced in the world. I mean, somebody that owns a plaza, or has owned a number of businesses, or an investor or something like that, is another story. But when you're dealing with something that's a mom and pop, chances are they won't notice it. Yeah, and I mean, I've been staring at site plans on this board for a better part of a decade, and there are still some things that I probably wouldn't pick up on.
Yep. I mean, if it's a new project and they're hiring an engineer and they're going forward, then it's all spelled out, it's out in the open, they're not buying the property until they know that happens usually.
When did these site plans start getting recorded?
When did they?
Yeah. With this requirement?
1987 or so. Most towns started recording.
I mean, because
Here,
you search titles for a living.
Yeah.
So what do you do when you do the title search? I mean,
With the plan, oh, sorry.
would something like this come up as you do the title search in your job?
No. Nope. I mean, you'll look at the plan, the restrictions on the plan, the requirements on the plan. I can't ever tell you that I've seen a site plan. I mean, are they recording these site plan control?
I've never
inspection?
seen one recorded, no.
No, they're not recording the inspection reports
Okay,
at all.
all right.
That's something that's deemed to be an in-house activity.
This is just commercial.
Yes, yes.
15,000 square feet or more.
I mean, I'll pull the Walmart one I'm doing again and relook at that, but, okay.
And for the most part, the stormwater devices aren't going to be much. We still live in a world in Kingston where we're using open swales and detention ponds, basically. And those just require, keeping the outlet structures clean, the inlet and outlet structures clean, and the grass swales managed in a way that actually allows flow of stormwater. So in most cases, an annual inspection would just be looking at whatever infrastructure exists. And on most sites, there isn't even any solid infrastructure. It's done with drainage swales and ponds. But for more now than it used to be, there are devices, and those stormwater improvements do have to be checked to make sure that they're functioning properly.
And when did MS4 come into play? The
Well,
federal,
MS4 at the EPA level's been around for a long time, but in southeastern New Hampshire, it's really been the last decade.
right, I was gonna say it was about 10 years when everybody seemed to be getting concerned about it.
Well, everybody started getting concerned with EPA flat style with
Right.
the fine. That all of a sudden caught everybody's attention.
And,
And this also, I'm sure everyone knows, this applies to new construction.
Right.
This doesn't apply to anything that's existing, commercial activity existing in town.
and when you think of the new construction that's come into place, there aren't all that many on file at this point.
Or any redevelopment activity that's adding that threshold cover impervious surface amount, but
So for example, the new one that we just did that was substantial redevelopment and new construction was the one on 125, what is it?
266,
No, the other direction, where you just added the new building, you had the one contractor base on the
yeah,
upper
the
level.
Patriot
just
Park.
on the lower level, yeah, Patriot Park. So, I mean, that was a new one, and they did come in with a full drainage plan and everything else as part of their reconstruction. And that was definitely over 15,000 square feet.
On that plan, it says subject to yearly inspection?
I don't think so, because did we have
No,
that?
the plan wouldn't, but there was a stormwater management plan that was developed and that got recorded with the site plan.
And on there, it says
In that
subject,
report, it says there will be annual inspections of the stormwater management devices on.
and that plan is, that stormwater management plan is recorded at the registry of deeds?
Yep.
All right. I have never seen one, and I'll be interested to look at some of these commercial plans that, I mean, I can understand if the notes, I mean, I've read notes on plans that I've never seen one saying, subject to annual site plan erosion. And if you're doing the title, and that actual stormwater plan management plan is not recorded, I don't see how a buyer is going to know that they gotta come in every 3 years, every 3 or annual, did we?
It says annually.
Annually.
The way we're going to structure it is that they have to do an evaluation of it, inspection of it annually. And we will check it every 3 years. The town will check it every 3 years.
So, I guess the problem is, you're not gonna see it in a deed until the property's transferred for the first time after this comes up, and that should definitely be book and page in the deed. However,
Never seen it.
the chances of it getting missed and not making that deed in the first place is excellent.
I mean, I think maybe a requirement on the, putting it on the plan, subject to, if you're gonna record the plan. There's a lot of times documents don't make it to record in these big developments where that stormwater management plan is not recorded. I mean, again, I'm gonna dig into it, I'll let you know at the next meeting, but I think if you're gonna start requiring this, and it's gonna be onerous on a buyer, that we might wanna have that noted on the plan instead of an agreement that may or may not get recorded. Like this, you know, if you're gonna do a stormwater management plan, submit it to Rockingham County or whatever,
No, it doesn't get submitted, oh wait, you mean the registry?
that as well, yeah. I mean, if that stormwater management plan isn't recorded at the registry of deeds, no one's gonna know that they have to have a year, the inspection.
Well, presumably, if we're going out and inspecting every 3 years, the most amount of time that would elapse is 3 years, that no annual inspection would be done. And at that point, if we're going out and saying, oh, by the way, this was supposed to be done, nobody told you, or you didn't know, or nobody looked at the plan to see the stormwater management plan, not the actual site plan, I would like to think that we would then say, consider this your, like, now you know, and now moving forward, we're not gonna ask that they go back and do.
Right, and there's no, keep in context what we're doing here. We're inspecting to make sure that stormwater management infrastructure is working properly. That's all we're doing. So if you haven't allowed the detention basin to get filled in with crap, then it's still gonna be working fine. In 3 years for a stormwater management device isn't really a long time. You know, everything is loamed and seeded, so everything is stabilized, and so usually you don't see problems with stormwater devices until 10 or 15 years down the road. And then in poorly maintained ones, you know, we've all been to a Walmart or a Target with poorly maintained ones, and you see that the detention pond has become a swamp. Yeah, it's clearly, it hasn't been maintained, and it isn't performing the duties that it's supposed to. That's why every 3 years, somebody goes out and looks.
Just to make sure.
Just to make sure.
So the next discussion would be, not for tonight, would be, who's going to inspect them? Who's going to start looking at the schedule of 3 years down the road? And how's it going to get done? And is the town really going to hire somebody to do it?
That is going to do it.
Yeah,
No, it's always gonna be the town engineer.
it'll always be the town engineer that does it.
That would be the town planner's wise sage advice. That it would be, I mean, I know some town planners that actually do it. They're usually town planners that have engineering degrees, because there's a lot of crossover between the two fields, but I'm not gonna do it. The day
I
you
wasn't
want-
suggesting that you were.
The day you want the planner to do it is the day we need a new planner in Kingston.
All right, line drawn in the sand there.
But I'm just saying, we've got to get it, we've got to get organized.
Absolutely.
Somebody has to be organized if this is going to be done to be effective.
Yeah.
And right now, we don't have that organization in place.
No, right now Dennis inspects it when he's doing the inspections that we require for construction.
Right,
But beyond that, no.
right. So,
And there is a cost involved.
and it needs to be part of the town planner, the town engineer job description,
Yeah.
which it's not. So there's a lot of things that have to come into play if this is going to work.
Yeah, and it needs to go into a particular file in the town that generates that. And then the question then becomes, is this something that the activity funds? In other words, when you start that, do you put it aside an inspection fund to pay, almost like bonding? And I know we talked about that with the 266 project, because there were so many things that needed to be examined, and later on, on another project, the gas station, we've done requirements, and it's often incumbent upon the operator to fund that. And I know All American is a perfect example of where we put that filtration, that new type of septic system in, with a wood chip system, and they discovered a problem within the first year, and the inspections weren't getting done. That wouldn't have been found, and the system would have been in failure for a long time before, probably we all noticed from the smell. So that's the type of thing that you've got to generate a particular system, and, you know, it's gonna generate things like, our 55 plus communities, are they submitting their reports of certifications of age, meeting the age requirements of our ordinance every year? And, you know, only one does it right now, so.
Well, let's don't go down that road, but yes, it does
Right,
require
but the
that.
engineering, all these things are things that we make and we put in as contingencies. And, you know, as you know, 266, 125 had all those multi-pages of contingencies.
It may be that we use the town has a consultant that helps us with our MS4 permit.
Right.
I mean, they meet monthly. It could be that maybe it's not Dennis that does it. Maybe it's somebody from that consulting firm that does it. The town does need to have that discussion.
Mm-hmm. Enforcement?
I don't see any fines or anything in here. Is this part of the selectmen's?
I mean,
Oh, the town gets fined if they don't comply with MS4.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's the stick
Right.
attached to the program.
I mean, that's why we're doing this, is
Yeah.
because the town doesn't want to get fined, so we have to comply. But I'm just saying, is there a fine if they don't comply? If there's an issue with their stormwater and they don't do the reports? If they don't do the reports for the first 2 years, and the third year the people come and there's no reports for the first 2 years, is there?
Revoke their site plan.
Well,
Let's say the
that's,
benefit of having this maintenance inspection responsibility recorded is that the planning board can then revoke site plan approval if the developer applicant is not complying with its stormwater maintenance and responsibility.
and remember, the first 3-year period, it's highly unlikely that this stormwater management choices are gonna fail.
I mean, I'm not suggesting we fine them, because I think everybody should get a.
Right, the goal
warning
is
to.
compliance, not
Right.
to fine them. The goal is that the infrastructure that they put in with their approved development is just maintained.
And the object is to educate. Let people know what they're doing, and it's the right thing, and that this is how they have to keep it maintained. I mean, education is the key.
And that maintenance plan is developed before we give them the approval.
Right.
That has been a comment on Dennis's memos for 3 years now. He always said that comment.
So anything-
Business opens up, business does site plan, business closes, disappears, vacant lot.
Well, there's language in there that allows the town the ability to go in, but it doesn't require it, but essentially the town will be liable if it's not done.
Yeah, and again, for the most part, very little is required to make these devices work. In a lot of instances, the stormwater management device on site is
Just a retention.
or even less, it's a grass swale leading to a wetland. And the grass swale helps filter out this, whatever's in that stormwater before it gets to the wetland. And so even if you're not really mowing that grass swale, stormwater is still getting filtered before it gets to the wetland. I mean, because we're not an urban region yet, most of our stormwater is still passive. You know, we don't have closed systems. We don't have a ton of closed systems. We don't loop into a closed system. We're not Exeter. You know, everything over in Exeter, everything done on site gets pumped into their municipal stormwater network. We don't do that.
Nor do we want to.
No,
So-
we do not want to do that here.
Maddie, were there any other changes? Where's your next one?
No, that's
it?
That was a summary of some of the major changes. Like I said, there are a lot of additional provisions that were looked over by your town engineer. But no, those were the major changes.
Well, good job.
Oh, thank you.
Yes,
And thank you for.
she did great work.
Gonna be some expensive ballots this year.
Well, like I said, it looks like a lot, but it's essentially what you have now, just a few more additional requirements. The maintenance and inspection responsibility, the biggest one, of course. Although you did have some maintenance and inspection requirements already, yeah, so,
We do.
yeah.
But we're still a small town, and it's important for us to figure out how the systems are going to work as well,
Absolutely,
before we move forward with changes.
absolutely.
And we do need to, the MS4 consultant was very happy to hear that we were working with the RPC on this. Because now, because they do an annual report for us, they do a study annually for us that gets submitted to the EPA, and I believe we will be working with them to establish some of these questions that we've had, who's doing what, and who's on first base, so that's to be determined. We pay them a lot of money.
We do. Unfortunately, the EPA
We pay them a lot of money.
doesn't get voted in. They just make their changes. Any other questions for Matty? We're gonna let you go home.
Can I just ask one thing? You guys want to be able to close this out.
Sure.
What is your deadline for doing that?
Probably in the spring.
Okay, because one of the things I've promised them repeatedly is, now that we're doing zoning changes, this is a regulation, and
Yeah.
we don't have to hold the public hearing to
Absolutely.
adopt this until things settle out, probably in the February timeframe. So if we do the public hearing in February, that doesn't hurt you guys with the
No.
grant.
No.
Perfect. I wanted to make sure we weren't somehow stepping on your
No,
feet.
no. I'll double check, but I'm pretty sure.
I thought that was the case, but we should have that discussion, because if we have to, we'll
Yeah, no, I don't.
push it
believe
forward,
so.
but-
As long as we have we're all set with the final draft and the town's
Perfect.
comfortable with it, you can adopt it.
perfect.
Any other questions or?
Thank you.
Well, feel free to reach out with any additional questions.
Thank you very much, guys.
So this is a regulation, and therefore, if somebody asks for a waiver, the planning board can
Correct.
Can authorize a waiver.
That makes me so happy. I was shuddering at the thought of
put this on the
another
ballot.
30 pages on the ballot.
Yes.
Robert, could you make a note
That is
to
not-
bring that
that
up,
is not
have
the
this on
case.
the agenda for the February
This
meeting?
is all done by
It
the
should be a
plan.
public hearing.
Well, the other thing is
The
that
public hearing night, the second meeting.
we don't have to put verbatim, I guess it's, if it was a new zoning ordinance, we would have to put it in verbatim in the ballot perhaps, but for these changes, for example, we issue a summary, we don't have to print
But
out.
the people that are bothered to show up to other public boards and meetings have advocated that they wish to see the full language, not the summary. And it's hard to go against that when they're the only ones that will bother to show up to the meetings anyway.
Oh, so that is the decision that's been made?
That's where I think things are going, is that people are demanding to see full language because nobody wants to read anything ahead of time and they're just gonna read it at the polls.
Okay, that's good to know.
So I've asked Robin to put this in for public hearing, for the public hearing night in February.
Oh, that regulation, absolutely, absolutely,
So we'll do that the second meeting in February.
perfect.
Nice. Well, we've got one thing under control tonight.
Okay, I'm very sorry. I don't usually leave my phone on, but I've just got a phone call from my wife saying that my brother is again missing. And this has been a bit of a challenge the last couple of days. I'm not leaving, but I would love if we could
Let's adjourn.
soldier on.
Yeah.
Would you like us to soldier on, or do you want us to
No,
recess the meeting for a few
I would
minutes?
like to soldier on.
Because I was gonna say, we can do invoices if you want to go take a call.
No, they're just establishing what I knew before I left to come here tonight,
Okay,
so, but
sorry.
the quicker we soldier through, the better.
We will soldier through this. Okay, let's start with our zoning ordinance that changes. And so what we'd be looking for this would be to decide how we want to move forward with it. The motion would be to move it forward to public hearing. The public hearing would be the first Tuesday in December. Okay? So, first one, Glenn, the ball's in your court. We'll soldier through with you.
Yes, yes, so how do we wanna take these? Do we wanna take them as we show on Robin's outline?
Okay, yeah.
That's the way of everything organized.
All right, so we'll start with the way it's all organized.
So if
the,
we do that,
the first thing is definitions,
right,
and we're removing the definition for family.
correct.
So,
So if you take Glenn's handout away, the rest of it's all filed and just kind of goes around.
yeah. Okay. Okay. So the first one is removing the definition of family. We discussed this a lot at our last meeting. Do we have any further comment on this? Are we ready for a motion?
So my suggestion would be, if we can do it this way, is look at each of the individual sections, say, do we have anything that we want to add, remove, or change, and then maybe vote on
Exactly.
all the changes to the preamble definitions.
Oh, okay.
And do we legally have to, do we have, I don't think we have to, I think we can bring them forward collectively, which would save us some time.
You can do it collectively as long as you're very clear in the motion what you're
Okay.
moving forward to town.
Correct.
All right. So, anybody have any questions about the definition of family? Okay, removing that. The next thing on it was industrial developments, which is the dedication of real property to the manufacture of goods or services. Does anyone have any further comments on that? Okay. The next one is on the back. We are redefining mobile home. And these are the definitions that we had talked about earlier.
So I have a note in here that says, do you want the language below? So this is part of the RSA. I don't know necessarily if it was.
Manufactured housing defined in the section shall not include pre-site built housing as defined in the RSA. Do you want to keep that as well? The issue with keeping that would be if the RSA changes.
Since we're proposing that we would also add pre-site built housing to the definitions, I think we should go with the language of the RSA.
Okay.
There is the possibility that the RSA would change, but I would hope whoever is the planner at the time would keep you guys appraised of that.
But we can also not say as defined by the RSA and just keep the definition in.
We could, but
Better to have the reference.
Yeah, I think it's cleaner.
Okay.
It's better, because
if
if they do change the RSA, we're covered.
Yep. Okay.
if you keep the reference in, and they did change it, but we didn't change our language, our attorney would make the argument that we've cited the RSA, and so if there was a substantive change, we would prefer that it be included.
Okay.
And I think it does make it a better argument for them.
All right. Are there any questions, discussion about the preamble changes?
I'll make a motion that we move the items listed under Robin's list of preamble to be definitions, all of the following as discussed, that we move it to public hearing.
Second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
And that's unanimous. Okay. Historic District. So we met with the Historic District last month at our meeting on October 3rd, and made a number of changes to the ordinance, starting with mobile homes, taking the definition of mobile homes and putting that into 102.4.
Is this a question here, if we're gonna keep it may or shall?
Yeah, I was gonna ask about that.
So I think we talked about, I could be wrong, but I think we talked about May being important there because it may
is.
be allowed, assuming that it conforms with all of the other
Correct.
criteria.
Right, it's not permissive, the word shall, when it appears in an ordinance, means it's mandatory.
Yeah, so we
And
shall,
you're telling that.
we shall
yes.
take that out.
Yes, yeah, May is preferred here, because it says, you know,
Okay. Is that, without taking a vote, is that everyone in favor of deleting the shall and keeping the may?
Yeah.
yes,
Okay.
yes.
All right. Then on page 3,
Yeah, so,
description of permitted uses.
yeah, I mean, there's still a note there, it says I'm still working on this one.
Yeah, and here's the reason. I'm comfortable that, I hated the language they had in it, so I'm comfortable with the language that I'm proposing. My issue is, this leaves us in the awkward position of making it clear why there can only be two residential buildings on a site in the historic district. And then we have the Chinburg property,
That's right.
where we're going to have way more than two structures on that site for residential use. And I've just been kicking myself in the head about this. And I think maybe what we want to do, well, what I really like, here's what I really want to do. I really want to talk to Huddy about it. But my concern is, we could just write a paragraph that says, for blankety blank tax map parcel number, Chinburg property, it is understood that a multifamily development is going to be, is an authorized use there. Making it clear that that's the only site in the historic district where multi-residential structures are envisioned to be on a property. Now, that, when I say that out loud,
Sounds like spot zoning.
Yeah. And so that's why I want to talk with Huddy, because we need not to shoot ourselves in the foot.
Right.
Well, I think we're at a point where we know morally and ethically, as the Chinburg project has come forward, even though they haven't come forward with a formal application, they have been guided
Repeat it for 2 years?
repeatedly for 2 years in a certain direction. And for us to suddenly reverse that direction wouldn't be morally or ethically proper. I think it's the way as I see the consensus of us looking at this.
I thought we had decided
Well, that is
with
what I'm really
the
asking.
HDC here that we wouldn't,
Yeah, I thought we decided we weren't going
we're
to.
not gonna alter that this year.
Yeah, I thought we said we'd hold off for a year and then
Yeah.
add it.
That's what our minutes say.
Because I think because we expressed those concerns.
So we're not going to add this paragraph either?
Well, what's in there now? What's in there?
Residents who said you weren't gonna change.
Right, and I don't think we can do this at this time. I think we need to hold up on this as well as not changing the definition of, the residences.
I mean, if we leave it just as residences, and we don't let ourselves get tripped up by the fact that we have an ADU ordinance that allows in residentially zoned areas that there could be a detached ADU, then we don't need to do anything about this.
Right,
But it means that on the proposal that the HDC did, we have to remove that paragraph that they put in. Because their paragraph put in the awkward language about, and the detached ADU will not constitute a building, which just drove me crazy. Because it is a building, you can't say it's not a building.
yeah.
So we would have to not do this and not do that in their list of proposals, and just leave it unaddressed until next year.
Yeah, I think that's the way you have
Is
to
that-
approach
So
this.
what we said, in our last minutes, the planning board and the HDC took a consensus vote, and agreed that residences will remain as is and revisit it next year. This is part of revisiting next year. I mean, to me, this paragraph is also part of
This is exactly from their revised minutes that came back to us.
their revised minutes.
This came, well, their revised. Version.
Okay. Except for an additional, so they kept it in.
They did, and we talked about it quite a bit, and that's what freaked me out.
Yeah, I think that is just part of the residences thing. It's gonna put us in the middle of a lawsuit.
And so we should make it clear to the Historic District Commission that we're also removing that section from their proposed
Yep.
changes.
And that we'll revisit that next year as well.
Is there any ability for me to talk with Heidi about this at all?
Yeah,
Do I have to go to the Board of Selectmen to do that?
I don't think so. I mean, I think I can authorize you to do that.
And again.
Will we have enough time to vote at the public hearing?
you can do it at the next week's
If-
meeting.
Okay.
If I can talk with her now,
Yeah.
I can tell you what she says at our work session, at our public hearing in November.
Okay.
We would still have time for the month, in the month of December.
Which
Okay.
means that we're putting it back into consideration for,
At this
This
point,
year.
let's don't.
Yeah.
Don't do the action you just said you wanted to do.
Yep,
And then if we have to do something different, we'll do it when we have a proposal before us.
right, we can work on it next year with Huddy.
So then I
throughout the
would,
year.
let's, why don't you reach out to Huddy, and then we just won't vote on moving this one until next meeting. We'll just table this one.
That's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay as well.
Okay,
That's okay as well.
If Chinburg doesn't move forward by next year,
we want,
and we still hold,
If Chinburg doesn't move forward by next year, and we still come up with this question next year, say we vote this in, what is the process Chinburg would have to go
You'd
through?
have to go get a variance. You'd have to go to the ZBA.
the whole project could stop.
Well,
If
is
it's-
that the
start.
only, say they move, we leave this out, they're not coming in for any of the variances?
I believe not.
Okay, all right. I hate to leave stuff open at high, we'll wait, high, we'll wait, high, we'll
They
wait.
talked about
Right.
a height requirement. They talked about a height requirement, so I'm not sure if they redesigned to get out of that height requirement.
Okay.
Variance, they may not have. We haven't seen a formal plan yet here at the planning board, so I don't know. But I'm thinking at the HDC, they're still seeing 3 floors. And if they're still seeing 3 floors, then they would require a variance for the height
So they'd have to have 2 variances, not just one for height, one for
use.
use. But there are very few parcels in the historic district
Right, that this would be an
that
issue.
this would even be an issue on.
Okay, all right.
I mean, when you think about it, there's maybe a few acres behind the Josiah Bartlett house. Okay, I mean, I'm just thinking of the land we've got here.
Right.
Other than that, there's a little bit of land behind 173 Main Street, which is the apartment building between Wigan Hall and the McDougal's. Out back is 15 acres, but a lot of that's wet. So the chances of that being built up is fairly slim. But when you think about the other parcels, there's not a lot of parcels. There's not a lot of land, empty land in the center of town. So it isn't like somebody's going to come in and build an apartment complex. I mean, everything, all the backland behind Scotland Road is all wetlands.
It is all wetland. I mean, that zone,
That's zoned,
differently.
yeah, that's zoned
That's-
over age 62.
Right, that's zoned age restricted.
But when you look at it, I mean, there's just really nothing there that hasn't
That's-
already been
that's
built
almost
up.
completely all wet, so.
I mean, just thinking of what's in the historic district, there's very little. So I can't imagine we're gonna be faced with any other projects with more than 1 or 2 buildings on the property.
Okay, there should be a motion to table that if that's.
But they also said 2 dwellings. So there could be some conversions. You know, somebody could buy your house and convert it maybe into 3 units. But, But you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do, I just,
There aren't,
I hate leaving open that, I mean, okay, what if someone else comes in besides timber? Someone buys that on timber. And it's just, like I said, open-ended, I don't like that, but.
Well, if we table it until,
whatever it
we
is,
table it until we've got some,
yeah.
it may be a non-issue by next meeting, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and even
Hopefully.
if somebody else came in, they'd have to go before the town, you know, to do it, if they want to do a multifamily project, they have to take over the Chimbrook project, they still have to come before us and get all of our approvals. But if there's any place in town to do that, that's it.
That is it.
Yeah. I'll make a motion to table the section of Article 102 until next week.
Second.
All those in favor? Okay. So the next one is description of permitted uses in B.
We're,
No, we're tabling
The
this
whole section.
whole. I thought we're tabling this because it's all kind of.
Everything in the historic district?
Yeah, I think it's all tied together, right?
No,
Oh,
not at all.
No, actually, all the other changes you could make without any impact.
okay, so, I thought you were saying there was a couple that would have to change if we were gonna omit that.
No.
I thought the same thing you thought.
So, under B, it's talking about Historic District 2, and it took out this area zoned single-family agricultural, and it changed it to the use of land in the district is limited to single-family dwellings, agricultural uses, and incidental uses such as private garages, boathouses, tool sheds, gardens, and the like. Agricultural use shall mean land used for agriculture, farming, dairying, pasturage, apiculture, horticulture, floriculture, silviculture, and animal and poultry husbandry. These uses will be permitted in conformance with the historic district ordinances and regulations. So there were no changes to the permitted uses here. The text is actually copied from the single-family residential AG zone.
Right, this was just
Yeah.
to change the name, because we already have SFRA
Yep.
agriculture, and this is a historic district zone, so
Right.
it's just
Right.
listing the uses that.
So any questions on that? Okay, we'll leave that and move to the next one, which is on page 4C1. And it's just a note showing that the
It's just adding
section 303 to
Right,
note
which
they
is the
need to go to the
sign
sign ordinance.
Yeah.
Does that actually have to be voted on because it's a comment and a helpful, not a real zoning change? It's not a substantive change, it's just a,
That it is actually just an editorial
That is editorial, yeah, we
addition,
can,
and
so why
you're
don't we,
right, that doesn't require,
why don't
Town
we
meeting
vote to add it, but let's not move it forward because
it doesn't, you're absolutely right. that
if we're
is
trying to
completely
keep our
editorial.
stuff down,
yeah.
Okay. That may be true of the next one as well.
That's completely editorial.
okay, sheds and, oh, no, at the bottom. Yeah, but there's someone at the bottom too, just putting the state law
Yeah.
in, the certificate of approval. Okay. And moving on to sheds and outbuildings.
Looks good.
Okay. Any questions about that? Seeing none. 102.8 procedure, which again is just not a substantive change, it's just letting them know that there's another place in the zoning book where they should look. Do we think we need to put that on the ballot, or just make an editorial change in our ordinance?
Keep that editorial.
I think that completely falls under editorial.
And then, in the next paragraph, we're removing the word receipt and putting filing in, isn't that also editorial?
I don't know, because the reason we're doing it is because of the definition.
You're right.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we have any questions about making that filing and not receipt? All right, let's move forward then. At the end of C, we're adding the word building inspector.
Yeah, that's a definite addition.
Okay, any questions about that? And then we put further details on the procedure can be found in that section. That's an editorial.
That's editorial, yeah, that's editorial.
Okay. And then in public hearings,
Editorial.
that's editorial. Guidelines.
So I'll explain this one. This is the page that's attached, is how the HDC gave it to us. This is how it's condensed to look now. So if you take it out, this is how you read it.
That's separate paper you gave us, yeah.
Yeah. So this translates to this.
Oh, okay, so taking all that stuff out.
Yeah.
Okay. And again, that's repeating, that's an editorial comment.
Well, only D,
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, nothing else is,
well, all that deletion requires a town vote.
okay. Okay,
So D is the only one that's editorial?
correct.
Well, wait, it's a new section that says whether the proposal is of a design.
Okay, yeah, no,
or
if it's a new
materials.
section, then it's not
Because
editorial.
so much stuff has to be moved and deleted, I don't think.
Yeah, I think we
I
keep
think
that
you're
as
right.
part
Changing the
of,
sections,
that becomes part of the
changing where it
change.
exists.
I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Okay. And then on the last page of the historic district stuff.
So there's all this.
Yep. So that,
And the blue means what now?
the blue is where,
It's not struck out.
The blue has been moved.
Oh, moved.
It got
Oh, I
moved
thought
from-
purple was moved, yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, it says moved to 102, okay.
yeah, it was, like, the purple was adjusted within the guidelines, but the blue got completely translocated from a different
Yeah,
section into this section to make it flow better.
yeah. So therefore, that's sort of editorial, the movement.
That is editorial, yes.
That is
So
editorial.
the blue on page 7
Yeah,
is editorial.
Which one is that, though?
102.10.
No, I know, but where is it on
Oh,
here?
on the list.
102.9,
Denials and appeals, but the problem is,
The problem is you're deleting it from guidelines and you're adding it under denial and appeal.
right,
So it can't be considered editorial.
and you're also adding building inspection to
Yeah.
that.
Correct.
Or
So
building
that's not
inspector to
editorial.
that, so it's not.
but the one above it, the language moved, is the editorial one.
Correct.
Okay,
Oh, so that one isn't really editorial.
right. And then pre-existing use, we've added in,
Yeah, that's new language.
New,
Yep.
Yep.
and new language that it must comply with the other ordinances. All right. So, do we have a motion on historic district?
I would make a motion to advance the changes proposed in Article 102 to public hearing with the exception of 102.5, which we agreed we'd hold.
Yeah.
106.C.1a, which is editorial. 102.7, which is editorial. 102.8, which is editorial. 102.81.8.1, which is editorial. That's it.
I think that's it. Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Moving along. Okay. So the next part is 102.5, 103.5, and 105.4 are new sections, and they're the first page of Glenn's handout.
Actually, they're found on the third page of my handout.
Oh. Oh, okay. Yep.
And that, the language that you see there in each case is just the language that's found in section 301. But now we would be putting it in the districts in the earlier part of the book so that somebody doesn't have to look all the way back to section 301 to find this setback information.
Okay. So 102.5, every structure shall be set back. So because we're just taking it from one section and adding it to another section, we're not,
I don't think so.
You don't think it's
I don't think so,
editorial?
because what we're doing is we're adding it to an ordinance where it didn't exist before.
okay,
Even though we're doing it for clarification purposes, we're doing it for clarification purposes. It is the law right now.
yeah, it is.
It's
So
the
by
law right
moving it
now.
there, isn't it editorial?
It really, all we're doing is putting it in the ordinance in order to make it
Easier to find.
easier to find.
And that's true for all three.
Yep.
It's true for all
Yeah.
three.
So we really don't need to take them to public hearing, it'll be editorial.
We just need to, and we can do that we could do that on Thursday.
Thursday.
We could do it anytime at
Oh.
all, we don't.
Okay, so we
'cause
can
we're
do it right now.
We're making no changes to the text. We're just putting it in a location where it's easier to find. It still remains in 301.
Yep.
We're not deleting it from 301.
So,
It's completely editorial.
so why don't we vote to make that change?
Just vote to have Robin do it
Yeah.
when she can.
Yeah, when she has time. Haha, when you have time.
Did you
really.
notice how I offered you up like a
Yeah, I know.
sacrificial lamb?
That's okay.
But that makes, that's strictly editorial, so,
We're making no changes at all to the law in the town of Kingston.
so shall we have a motion to add the setbacks to these three ordinances?
Just so
As
that
of
they're
now?
easier to find.
Yeah, to make it easy to find? And therefore, we don't have to go to the ballot.
I make a
Anyone?
motion to adopt Glenn's proposed editorial changes to Article 102.5, 103.5, and 105.4.
Second? All those in favor?
Hi.
Okay.
Just as a note for the minutes, I just want to make sure that moving these doesn't conflict with the citizens petition warrant article that was passed last year regarding sheds, because that has a reduced setback that was voted on by the townspeople.
Right.
I just want to comment in case anyone says, no, we changed it, now
No,
that.
no, that wouldn't change.
Yeah,
Nope.
I know it legally doesn't, I just want if anyone ever viewed the minutes that it's at least captured.
So the next one is 107, industrial zone. And no changes needed under 107, only to the preamble.
Correct, we're just adding it into the
Right.
preamble.
So therefore, we don't have to worry about that one.
Well,
Okay.
wait, isn't it a new definition?
It is like an
Yeah.
exposed definition.
Oh, okay. So the new definition that we put in the preamble.
Correct. And that's from a previous set of comments, so it's, where does it exist?
Where is,
Where is it?
where's 107?
Go to the preamble.
The existing preamble?
The one we did.
The one we just did.
Oh.
Okay, the industrial development, the dedication of real property to the manufacture of goods and services.
Oh, sorry, it's number 15. This number 15 on here?
Right, that's what it is, it's number 15. We had number 16, the question is, did that stay?
So industrial development is coming off? Or does that stay? That's my question.
I think that goes away.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's on the back of the preamble.
So the motion would be to adopt 15 and delete 16.
Oh, okay.
I'm confused, I'm sorry. So didn't we just vote to adopt, or to advance 16?
But she's asking if we should also change 109.7 to match. Oh, wait a minute.
No.
I'm sorry, to change 107 so that it matches.
It's just a question, do you need only the reference in the preamble?
Or do we need to make another change?
Right.
Right, because presently, what shows here is number 16, industrial developments, exists in our definitions. But that really isn't a very good definition of industrial developments. So industrial was what I was offering for a definition for industrial use. And if we adopt 15, 16 would be superfluous. Because presently 16 is what is in the ordinance.
So my confusion is I thought we already did that. When we voted on adopting all the changes in preamble too. Or advancing on it, we did.
Yeah, there's just a question here, does anything need to be under 107? Or can it just be a definition under preamble?
I mean, it does, both of them can exist in the definition section. One is a definition of industrial
Right.
activity, and one is just a definition of industrial development, but it does, 16 really doesn't say anything. The dedication of real property to the manufacture of goods and services.
Plus, if we've taken away the reference, the term industrial developments out of the ordinance book, you don't need to define it. Since the only place it appears is, I believe, is in the section we're about to remove, or we plan to remove.
That industrial section that says that there needs to be a vote of town.
Yeah, that one that, so, I mean, it's a bit like saying, defining what the commercial zones are and then giving a definition of commercial development.
And so looking at Robin's article 304 at the bottom of the first, the sheet. So do we keep it in 304, or do we have a definition in the preamble? How do we want to work that?
I thought we were
304 is being removed altogether.
304 we removed altogether?
One sentence.
Yeah, that's
It's just
right.
one sentence, and it just,
Yep.
we've decided it's OBE. We don't need to go to
Right.
town meeting at any time anybody wants to make an
Yeah.
industrial development
Exactly.
outside the industrial zone.
Yep.
So my question there was, I was skipping ahead, is do we need to make a note, keep that there, make a note that it was removed or whatever?
Keep what there?
The
304.
reference to 304 in the ordinance book.
And just make a note
Can
that
you
it
just
was
rip it
removed.
out like it never
The way they do
existed?
it in the RSA's, it
Yeah.
says removed, the
Yeah.
statute was removed.
That's my question.
Yeah, I think you don't need to have the statute, just say 304, statute removed.
That's what I mean, so keep it as a placeholder in the book.
Right.
Yeah,
That's what I was asking.
yeah, okay, I get
Okay.
it.
So we're all set on 304, and we're back to 107.
But I think you have to vote on that, because doesn't it?
Yeah, when we
Yeah,
get there.
the town has to, yeah.
We want to stay in order.
Please do. Makes it so much more easier.
I don't think we need to make a change to 107.
Do we need a motion for that?
To preamble.
Do we need a motion?
Yep.
Yes, you should have one.
Well, if we're gonna keep it the same, then we don't need a motion, because we're not making any changes.
We're not moving any new language to the
Yeah,
ordinance.
so 107, we're
It's
just
just
can't
more of a-
keep it the
it's more
same.
of a question.
Okay. So we all set with leaving it as it is? Okay. Moving on to commercial zone C2, under special exceptions, change the word special exception to conditional use permit.
Okay, now this is the first page of.
So, just so that you know, I asked Glenn to make one change, and that, if you're looking at the first page of Glenn's handout, you're looking at 109.7, and you're looking at conditional use permits meet the following standards. Under 1, no unreasonable impact of property values. I thought that was very subjective. Who was going to just determine whether or not a property value was affected, whereas we're keeping in to property values in the vicinity on account of, other structures, scale of buildings, other structures, parking, access ways. Those are all the things that would reduce the value of the property anyway, perhaps, or not, but actually the unreasonable impact of property values is such a subjective way of looking at it. Just that somebody has to go out and determine that, this property is gonna sell for less money because it's next door to such and such. And that is, I guess what I said to Glenn was that when we were working on 266 Route 125, people over at King's Landing were concerned it was going to affect their property values. And yet, at the Walmart facility in Raymond, they have a whole new housing development that went in, abutting that, and they were selling the houses at market rate. So, it's such a subjective thing that I just didn't think the value should be there, because we know if you've got obnoxious odor, you've got obnoxious noise and that sort of thing. We have actually zoning ordinances that deal with that. You can't have the odor beyond the property, you can't have the noise beyond the within a certain noise level on the decimeter.
Well, it wouldn't eliminate your using, if you said that you'd have to change property to properties, no unreasonable impact of properties, do that, it would increase the number of potential impacts, not just the property values, but you could say, well, this has an impact on the property, the livability
Yes.
Aspects. I'll tell you where that property values, I'm sure, came from, and that is that it's taken out straight out of the state statutes for variances and SEs, so that.
But I just thought it was subjective, and having people have to figure out how to do that.
It's subjective even in the instance of special exceptions and variances.
Yeah.
It is. One of the ways they do that is saying that you have a professional, you get Lynn to come in and say what the impact of having a development next to your house is going to be on your property values, and if it's not counter by a professional opinion from the opposition, you have to accept that professional opinion as being that. It's almost like a law case where you get professionals come in, they get recognized as professionals by the court, and each side always gets a professional to come in and say exactly what they want them to say.
Yep.
But
And here you'd have to have an appraiser. It wouldn't be a real estate agent, it would have to be an appraiser.
okay, yeah, I did.
I'm just
I
saying.
don't know the difference yet, but you're right, you'd have to have a property appraisal done, or somebody who could say. Now, what they do say also is that, board members would have the capability of using their own experience to understand, and so that you can say as a board, would I want that, and if I was about to sell my house, what would be the effect of having this development going next door? And so property values would be one of the things you can consider, but it also is, as I said, livability and other factors. So if you say no unreasonable impact to the properties in the business entity, then that kind of opens it up to more ways to analyze the impact on the properties. So, and if somebody wants to argue that it would affect their property values, they can certainly make the case, and that would have an impact on their property.
So I'm hearing just change property to property use.
Yep.
Properties.
And remove
Value.
values.
And remove values, yeah.
And there was no other change proposed in here,
Nope.
except changing
Except
special
changing.
exceptions to conditional use?
Correct. And basically what that does is give that back to the planning board to do, and not have to go to zoning board of adjustment, which would save time in meetings. We've had so many times it has to go to planning board to be rejected, to zoning board to be approved, and back to planning board. It's kind of
Yeah,
crazy.
and most of the cases we have were cases, it just wasn't one of the things that was already in the zone. The new kind of business, or just one of, 20 million businesses types that exist in this country, that you couldn't list all of them. And that's one of the problems with permissive zoning, is you can only, anything that's not listed as permitted is prohibited. So the only other way of getting around that is to make the permitted uses exceptionally vague, like retail, not listed by size of retail or whatever. So it does. It's basically a way of saying, well, this would fit, and we've tried to do that here before by saying, by working strange angles and saying, well, this is kind of an accessory use to such and such, and you're trying to shoehorn it in to an existing listed use, and in this way you wouldn't have to. You could just say, well, we need a cup. We've done it in cups before. It's just now you can't use a CUP for something that's listed as prohibited.
Correct. So, any further questions about that? So both are the same, because that's our conditional use criteria. So just moving the conditional use from special exception, which would be zoning board, to conditional use, which would be planning board.
Well, if we change the word property to properties in number 1, should we do the same thing
And number 2, yeah.
in number 4, where it says no, to adjacent property? Should it?
No,
Oh, no, I
Yes, because otherwise, public on adjacent property.
doesn't really matter. but-
Oh,
think it's fine.
that's more vague.
I guess
Yeah,
it
that-
really
that's-
doesn't matter.
When you're using the word adjacent, you're talking about abutters,
Right.
Right.
whereas the other one says
In
impact of the
vicinity.
properties in the vicinity.
So that changes again, though, in 110.5.
Correct.
So I guess just for the purposes of a motion, how do we want to do this? Because we're kind of skipping.
Well, these should be done separately since
Yeah.
they're two separate.
Okay. So I make a motion to advance the changes proposed in 109.7. Special exceptions, with the addition of changing the word property to properties.
Then a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And now we move to Article 110, which is C3, Commercial Zone 3, permitted uses K. And that's also in Glenn's handout. So what we've added is new language to clarify the 1,000 feet and what businesses apply to it.
No. We just did the conditional use permit change for
Oh, that's right.
for 109, but we have to do it for 110.
We do, but that was the third thing on 110.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, actually, why don't we, since it's next on Glenn's, why don't we go ahead and take that one? Make the conditional use permit for 110.5. Do we have a motion for that?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
And that's with the
Yeah.
properties.
Yeah.
Just the properties, yes.
Properties and removing values. Okay. So let's go to permitted uses K.
Confused and befuddled?
A little bit, so, but my memory probably is failing me. So I thought we said we were gonna leave this as it was, based on the advice from council, and not take this on. But I could be just imagining that.
Were you at the last meeting?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think it was that we wanted to just allow the planning board some discretion so that it wasn't a hard line interpretation that essentially excluded a lot of opportunities for businesses.
Yeah, originally we had decided that we would leave it as it is, and then Lynn wanted to bring it up as with the changes to allow dissimilar uses. And we had a discussion because one of the things Glenn was talking about delineating, it was leasing versus sales, but that is, car sales and car leasing are done in the same lot. It's the same transaction.
But you don't have Avis or...
Right, that's rentals, car rentals and stuff like that would be different.
And that's why they separated that out. Short-term rental company would not be subject to it.
Right.
And heavy truck sales would not be subject.
To be next to automobiles, but heavy truck sales would be excluded. Or heavy equipment sales.
I like that it gives discretion. It gives some opportunity for the board to look at the totality of it, because I think there's so many different variations of what could be brought before you. There's no way you can craft it in a way that's just a hard and fast rule that's clearly understood and could be fairly applied.
That was the attempt. Was to have the language show that there are real differences between these kinds of businesses, even though we've lumped them presently as if they're all the same thing. Because as our experience has shown, they're really not the same thing.
And if we kept it this way, then for example, the company that was going to be refurbishing trailers, tractor trailers, would have been allowed.
Wouldn't be similar to either Pat's Trucking or
Right.
the recreational vehicles up the street. Because they're just not the same operations. And then it specifically says, the planning board is allowed to determine if proposed uses constitute uses that require the 1,000-foot separation, so that the board can go on record as saying, we've looked at these two uses, we consider them to be substantially different and not subject to the 1,000-foot separation.
Yeah, I think because the reason why they clumped everything together was everything that would require vehicles, trailers, you name it, you know, RVs and all that, whatever, just filling the lots up with vehicles and trailers is what they're trying to avoid, having that. And then you start asking the question of why is C3, if this is a density issue, why aren't they allowed in C1 and C2?
No, that why is this provision not included in the C1 district is the C1 district doesn't have the special exception issue. That is a drag over.
No, I'm talking about auto sales, you know, RVs and all that stuff. Why is this just C3?
I mean, should we have
Yeah,
1,000
why-
feet between them and the other zones?
Well, do we even allow them in the other zones?
Correct.
I think it was
We don't.
specifically taken up at the time because this was
Creeping up from Plastow,
Plastow being
yeah.
becoming
Right,
the used
and
car
that
auto
is-
mile.
And
Right.
the Plastow town line is in C3.
Yeah.
But the net result of it being of that density is because we said C3 is the only place that we'll put those businesses. Whereas if you wanted to distribute them out and you felt that 1,000 foot separation was unreasonable, you could open up C2 and C3, C1 and C2 to these operations.
But I feel like we're making it less restrictive, so why would we need to do that?
Well, no, I'm asking the question is, if this was to reduce the auto mile effect in C3, wouldn't the other way of doing that being opening up the rest, the other commercial zones?
As opposed to loosening the restriction.
Putting this,
I think if you look back at the historical data on when if they wanted that activity, they would prefer it be at the south end of town. But they didn't, I don't think they necessarily wanted to encourage it on the north end of the town and the other commercial districts. But if they were gonna do it, they wanted to try and restrict how it looked.
There's a lot of.
I don't think they ever wanted to encourage it to be spread out through all of 125 through town. If looking back at what I could find on some of the old meeting minutes and data on it.
Correct.
Oh, yeah.
And there are very few permitted, well, there's quite a few permitted uses in C1 as well. And C2 had fewer, but
that's because it's in that restricted.
C2 has the least number of allowed uses.
right. Well, how would you like to move forward, people?
Well, I'll make a motion that we move this as is. I do think it may not get addressed this year, but I think there's another, it came up during discussions that when we do allow these businesses, there are other types of restrictions that we could put on them of how they're built that would actually solve a lot of issues, even if you had numerous ones there, but if they were developed in a way like LePage's Auto is, where you're not allowing the display of the vehicles to be right on the front of the lots,
And yet the front of the lot still has to be landscaped and look nice. So there's ways.
Right, and you know, there's the whole thing about having everybody parking on gravel and stuff, so that,
Yeah.
you know, we're not enforcing that now, so.
but I think this just addresses some separate issues that have come up, but I think there's some work that could probably be done on the specific for like car lots and stuff like that.
So we'll make a list.
But I'll make a motion that we move this Article 110 as written to a public hearing.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Well, that was just under K. Permitted uses, we're gonna add warehouses, and which letter should we add warehouses into on C3?
I don't think I addressed that one, did I?
Yeah, I didn't see any notes from Glenn on that one.
Well, you're asking, I'm reading this as you're asking where we would put warehouses.
I think we'd probably put, as a UVW, and just put warehouses.
Well, wouldn't it also be a wholesale business?
Well, wholesale businesses and warehouses, you think? Yeah. Okay. Wholesale businesses and warehouses.
So under O? Under O?
Under O.
Oh.
Oh. Do we all feel comfortable with that? All right, we have a motion. I guess we can just do motion on all of the 110 articles. And then 110.6, lot regulations B and setbacks.
It's actually attached here.
Oh, it is attached.
Was that just,
Oh, it's attached to the fee.
and that was just to show that those setbacks are actually different than what are found in other sections, right?
Okay.
Yeah, it's the
I
second
did
page
those.
second page of that staple.
Yeah. Okay. K, permitted uses, special exception.
And why did we change the 30, remind me, at the front? From 25 to 30? It was in a different, yeah. That sounds right.
General standards were in the other.
But here's
Right.
the issue with that. If we put that into C3, and you have a house sitting in C3 that is now really commercially zoned, and it's a non-permitted use, do we still need the 50-foot buffer for that? So for example, you've got that little tiny house across from alternative sales that's been sitting there forever. Does that, because it's been there forever, does that need a permitted use? And then sometimes you have something like Bresnahan's, which has a house, a residential property, and a commercial property. Does that residential use now require the additional setbacks? So I think it should be zone, not use.
Well, as we discussed this before, we use use in C1 and C2. And you're trying to tell people in C3 that they're not as valuable as the people who live in the other zones. These are houses, what you're doing is you're taking away a right that someone has to continue to live in their house. When you put zoning in, this is part of grandfathering, is that you, their right to use their property, especially as people in the rest of the town use them, exists. And if you change that to say that they don't have the buffering capability that other people in town have, you're A, discriminating against the people in C3, and B, you're inconsistent with your rest of your own zoning ordinance. And that was the reason we brought it up, is because we use use, and that issue came up in the warehouse industry, the business at 266, where they were thinking, well, all those residences along Marshall Road, which is a traditionally residential area, and those are all houses and whatever, that they didn't have a right to a 50-foot buffer. And of course, we know what happened at Bresnahan's, where they not only didn't get their 50-foot buffer, they didn't get any buffer. They got mowed over. I think that unless you're planning to change C1 and C2 to zone and take those people's rights away from them, I don't think that's really enforceable to have a different system, different guarantee. There's still a lot of houses, including the blue one that was next to the trailer place that has been fixed up, and there's across the street Leeds and everybody else who lives along 125.
There's a few of them, yep.
And I think telling them that they're they're not entitled to the same protections as other people in town is poor idea.
Okay. And then we changed the 30-foot front setback to also conform with the other districts? Is
Right,
that-
everywhere along 125 is 30 feet setback, well, 25 is, there's a larger setback, but,
Well, this would be
it
120.
says 100 feet from the center line, 125 is the setback on 125, but this is, otherwise, front setback is 30, it's consistent with the other
other zones.
frontages.
Okay. So does everybody feel comfortable with all the issues with Article 110? Any further questions on 110? Seeing none, we have a motion?
Make a motion to advance to public hearing all those items in Article 110 that we haven't previously voted on. So 110.3, adding to Section O, 110.6 and setbacks B, 110.6 setbacks C.
Second? I'll second. Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Now, changing the name of innovative zoning to conservation open space zoning, is that a editorial?
No, that's really,
Okay,
we're really changing it, so, no.
all right. Do we have a motion?
Yeah, I'll move, we move the hearing, Article 204, the changing of the name of innovative zoning to conservation open space zoning, November, what's the date? What's the hearing date?
December.
December, I know you told us at the beginning and for our motions, but
No, December
I get
5th.
December 5th, okay.
Second.
Because we need to have 2 public hearings in December. One is 5th and this-
You can give it to Robin.
Here. All right. Lot regulations, we did that. Added reference to CDC. HDC rather. Okay, accessory dwelling unit ordinance.
Wait, hang on a second, on Article 301, we talked about this before, our 301.1B,
Yep,
eliminating that, because that's the one that says you can't have anything more than 2 residences on one site.
oh, yes, that's right.
And I don't know how it got missed off of here, but I saw that 301.1, and it says added reference to HDC.
Is it the highlighted section at the bottom?
Also adding the highlighted section at the bottom.
Yeah.
For properties in historic districts.
Where,
For properties in the historic districts, a certificate of approval is still required from the Historic District Commission. Refer to sections 102.7.1 and 1201.10.E for further information. Okay,
wait a second.
Do we need a motion on that?
I think that could just be considered editorial as long as the other article passes at town warrant.
yep.
That's,
Glenn, what do you think about that?
I think it's editorial.
Okay, good.
okay,
I
so.
like that.
So we don't make a change now.
Yeah, we don't want to make a change now because some weird reason, like, one section fails and then this, for some reason, people aren't paying attention, then this passes, then it conflicts.
So we will
Or it
move
refers something that doesn't exist, so I think it's editorial as long as the other one passes.
We'll move that to the first meeting in April.
Okay, so what do we,
You don't want to move this language to vote because it's really an editorial reference. Because
Right.
if the language didn't pass in the other thing, because
However, on 301.1B, the one we talked about that caused Huddy and everybody else.
that one's gonna get voted on. But
Okay, but we
as much
have
as we
moved-
like to think people actually read what they vote on, if somebody didn't pass that one, and then we pass this one, it's gonna reference something that doesn't exist.
Oh.
So it should just be considered an editorial
Yeah.
change, should the other article
And we'll make
pass
that-
at town warrant.
at the April meeting.
So you're talking about, this F is what you're talking about now?
Yeah.
Correct.
But we did not move 301.1B to hearing. And so that's why I'm bringing it up, because it's not on the list. And so let me read this one to you. 301.1B is every building lot shall have no more than one single-family home or one two-family dwelling thereon. And then it goes to joining together two separate structures for any kind, the purpose of having them meet the definition of a two-family.
Yeah, but correct, but this one for F is completely different from that one.
Right, but this one I'm talking about is not listed here.
What?
We're talking about the article that.
Didn't we say we were gonna hold off on that until Glenn talks to council and then we revisit it next month?
Next
I
week.
have not been asked to do anything with this one.
Oh,
No,
Well, then-
we discussed it
We
a
did
number of
discuss it.
times and said it just needs to be gone because it doesn't apply. This is under building lot requirements.
Yep, and
If
you're
you're
right, it
gonna
needs
build,
to go.
build an apartment building, you know, if we want to put in multifamily housing along the east side of 125 in C2,
Yeah.
You can't do it.
we can't do it because, and this came up in, as part of the veterans housing here in Main Street in HDC. Because their lawyer correctly pointed out that we have that ordinance and we weren't following it. It's come up twice before and that's when Glenn went to Huddy to get legal counsel and
So
bottom line
the
was
recommendation was just to remove it.
remove it. It dates back to when we didn't have commercial zones and we just had rural residential. And one of the requirements of rural residential, and that's the only zone where this definition.
Then I would say, because we don't have anything actually written for the change in front of us, we can't vote to move it. So if we could have Glenn put that on for next week, because we have some other stuff
No,
we have
what you're
to.
saying is all we're doing is deleting it.
Yeah, deleting it.
And I think we
doesn't
could
require
probably
it.
delete it
Okay.
tonight if we want to.
All right.
I mean, when you look at it, it does say that no building lot in the entire town can have more than
A single-family house
one
or-
single-family home
Yeah.
or one two-family home, and that's not what we do.
Yeah.
So I think that does have to be deleted.
Yeah.
Okay,
And
so we need
it's
to-
tripped us up before, so.
So do you want to make a motion to that effect?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we move to hearing the deletion of Article 301.1B as in Bravo.
We have a second.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and that passes too. All right, we're accessory dwelling units, and that's on Glenn's sheets.
Okay, well, this is, hold on to your hat.
Page 3, right?
did we miss 304?
Nope.
Industrial development.
We did.
Yeah, we discussed that earlier.
We didn't vote on,
didn't
we
vote
didn't
on it.
actually vote on eliminating Article 304, which we should.
Okay,
And I'll move that we move to hearing on December 5th, the deletion of Article 304.
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. ADUs, requirements E.
The only thing I couldn't understand, you said that anything under 1,800 feet would be a maximum of 600 feet? Why wouldn't it, is it that the old 30%, changing the?
Oh, that is the old 30, yes, that is the
Yeah.
old 30%, you're right.
And so wouldn't it be, as long as it's accessory, so 49, using the 49%, and I think we should change the 0.49 to 49%,
All right.
just as an editorial change, but since we haven't written it yet.
And why did we do 49 versus 50? Just to make it harder for
Because
people to
otherwise
calculate?
it's not
To
accessory,
make it clear that it's accessory, that it's less than.
Okay,
it's gotta be less than.
got it.
It's gotta be less, and that is the least you can be less.
Yeah, okay.
You don't wanna go 49.99?
I do not.
The least you could be nice.
But hey, follow that train of thought that you're talking about, Peter.
Oh, ADU, where did you write that down? The 1800, you said, I think it's near the bottom. I read it online, so I
I
didn't.
see it. In the case where a home is smaller than 1,800 square feet, the ADU may be no larger than 600 square feet.
But in this case, the ADU can be no smaller than
899?
899 square feet, right?
Yeah. So I think the only reference you need, if you're gonna agree to that change, I think you would just strike that language referring to the 1,800 square foot ADU.
Right, there's
Because
no-
the only one that's gonna be specifically carved out is the 1,200, 600.
Yeah, you have 1,200 is your minimum size to have an ADU,
Yeah.
1,201. And that's the minimum size of an ADU is 600 square feet. We're not making a maximum size ADU other than 49%.
Yeah,
Right.
correct.
Okay.
This is a huge change, people.
That is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is a huge change. And I'm trying to accomplish two things. First off, we're staying here with gross living area. And I gotta tell you, I can't be responsible for trying to figure out anything other than, I can do 49% of the gross living area.
Yeah.
That's math that I can do.
Yeah.
Because I'm a planner. I can work that. I can't do anything, the information you gave me from HUD that talked about other things, I couldn't, that just scared me.
So here's the thing, on the tax card, we've got GLA, gross living area, and we've got effective. Just go with what's on the tax card.
And that's what we say we do.
But the problem, and here's the problem with that, I'm just saying, when you look at the tax card, in bold print it says GLA, then it gives you 3 numbers across that line. It does not break them down different. I'm more comfortable doing this because I think this is easier, and then just going off of what the town planner says, hey, this is the number next to the closest to the bold-face GLA, so this is the one I'm gonna use. But the way it was on the tax card, it does not delineate and make it very clear. But I'm more comfortable using this because then this coincides and make it as equal to the person that you're getting the same benefit as the person with the 1,200 square foot
Right.
home, being able to get essentially a 50% size ADU. So if you're somebody that has a larger home, you're getting pretty much that 50% benefit that the 1,200 square foot person is getting. I think it just makes it consistent. It allows the same essential square footage or percentages for every ADU.
And the only issue where it comes up is in single-family residential, and that's where it has to look. I mean, it could be a barn, whatever, it's gotta look like a garage or barn or.
Right,
That
becomes what the planning board has to do whenever they get an application.
Right, and we have the tools to do it now, because we've said you have to provide.
Elevations,
elevations
sketches,
and
drawings, all
and
that
whatever.
stuff,
And so, obviously the goal is to prevent what happened at presidential states from happening again, where people put 2 houses on the lot. Yeah, it's SFR, so.
And so but this, we could see much bigger ADUs now.
Yeah.
But my response to that is, so what?
Yeah.
I mean, if you've got a big home, then you can have a big ADU. And you know what? Your tax bill will be big on that ADU, and you're going to pay that to the town.
Yeah, and quite frankly, I mean, this is, as the real estate market is doing what it's doing, you are gonna see multiple generations trying to live on one property.
Right.
Because it's gonna be, I don't know how my kids are gonna be able to afford their own single-family home.
I see these changes in every town.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
They're opening the floodgates with this stuff.
Yeah.
Well, they kind of have to.
Yeah.
I mean, when you have to find 30,000 new housing units in
I just
state.
think the important thing for ADUs is that we make it continue that it be contingent, that it's only authorized when the owner of the property primarily lives in the primary house, so that you don't have corporations or people just buying these homes, then slapping up an ADU, and then they essentially just have 2 rental units that they don't have nothing to do.
We're
They have nothing to do with
keeping
except cash and checks.
That the property owner makes the decision where they wanna live. They wanna live in the big house,
Yeah.
or they wanna live in the small house.
But they have to live on the property.
But they have to live in one of them.
Yeah, so I'll make a motion that we move this one to public hearing with the editorial change of changing the 0.49 to 49%. That Peter suggested, and then we strike the last sentence of the first paragraph referring to the 1,800 square feet and 600 square foot items.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And now we have the FEMA warrant articles.
And as ugly as this is, people, we're talking about FEMA. There's nothing we can do about this. All we can do is do these changes. Because, well, there is something we can do. We can refuse to do this, and they will withdraw Kingston from the National Floodplain Insurance Program. That's what they'll do. There's no option, there's no ifs, ands, or buts. They found these deficiencies in our ordinance, we make these changes, or they don't make us eligible for the program, which we've been in for many, many years. So I'm assuming we want to do it, so we should.
Oh, I think we have to do it, because you never know when a flood is gonna hit.
I'll make a motion that we move them to public hearing as presented.
Yep.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
So the residents vote on this one?
Yep.
Yeah.
What if they don't agree?
We have to make it very clear that that voting no means the town gets withdrawn from the program.
Yeah, you may lose your home insurance.
You can find that
And that's
you
a-
now
that's a-
can't insure against flood, which, you know what, at some point, the program is probably gonna go away anyway. Because with climate change, I mean, there are some states that are now refusing to insure. I mean, some states where insurance companies
are refusing to insure,
insure for flood damage.
So just to give you an idea, in Florida, our
Yeah, that's
house
one of the
is-
states, right?
Our
Florida?
house, yeah, is a foot above where it needs to be, so we have flood insurance, but we're okay. Our next door neighbor is like 3 feet lower. His homeowner's insurance went up $18,000 this year. That was the increase in his homeowner's insurance because of where he is. And he's got flood insurance too.
I mean, because some companies are just saying they're not going to do it
They're
anymore.
walking right out.
They're walking right away.
So this last one that we have coming up, I just.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
Everyone
that's-
just got it today when you came.
Yeah. Did you
And
print
it's just-
copies
I
of
just
that,
got it.
Robin?
Yeah.
Oh, it should be, here it is.
I think this one,
keep going.
because I just was able to start reviewing it last night, and I got it from Honey. I would like us to maybe not move to motion this one, so we can get some clarified items and get any input anyone has until next week. And then we could, have this one tabled just before we move.
I mean, I looked at it.
It's pretty,
just
it's
to
very
see.
extensive and comprehensive.
It is.
I just,
And they've,
Yeah,
has she
I
changed everything in the article? Pretty
Oh.
much?
oh yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. It went from being 3/4 of a page long to being 4 pages long.
Yeah, it's extensive, but, so this is coming from the select, that's the one thing that wasn't said, is
Yeah,
where this
this
came
is-
from, is
I
it
have
coming
nothing
from the
to do with
selectmen? And you had to work up on the wording and stuff, so.
Correct. And so I think, and we have to have it in the appropriate format, so Glenn may have to work on that to show what, if it's just, we struck the whole previous one and completely replaced with this, I think that's gonna be the easier way to do it. But I just would like folks to have some time to digest this and offer any input prior to next week.
Yeah, I think the critical thing is, as you said in the preamble here, is that we need to figure out where campgrounds are gonna
Which-
go.
yeah.
Which zones, because they
I
are,
think we could discuss that tonight.
you wanna do that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because then they could incorporate that in the changes to be made. So first of all, according to this, I think campgrounds is a minimum size,
They do put 10 acres.
10 acres. So there aren't a lot of properties that are 10 acres in town. when you think about it, because if there were, we'd have an awful lot more innovative zoning changes, you know, zoning developments, because that's got a 10-acre as well. But when you look at this, I thought, well, it's a campground, so rural residential.
Well, you
And
tend to think
commercial.
about where they are now,
And
is
a
is
commercial.
places like, you know, that were,
Well, there are two campgrounds,
125 has got.
Millbrook.
Millbrook and
And Country Shores.
Country Shores. And then if you, you know, then you had the Boy Scout camp and Camp
But that's
Tasker,
not-
but that's not a campground
That's not a
yet.
campground. We have two campgrounds in town, right? We have any more than two?
Well, we said that the Boy Scout camp should continue being a Boy Scout camp.
But
But
that's
not,
not a
it's
campground.
both.
But it's not a camp, you're not.
Yeah,
we're not
you
being
can't drive your
campground.
RV and hook up.
Absolutely.
We didn't authorize it to operate like a campground,
No.
but it's
It's not a
definitely.
campground.
as a
It is
youth- it's a youth camp.
It's a youth camp.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a camp, it's not a campground.
Just like the Camp Lincoln is a
Right.
youth camp, not a campground.
And the rec center, they run a youth camp, you know, use. I mean, so there's youth camps, but there's not
Yeah.
campground.
Campground.
Yeah, and that's,
Would there be any consideration of, would anyone, I guess, try to do that in agricultural? Are there any properties that have enough land to?
Yeah, there are properties that have enough land. It's-
There are that Bradbrook property, right?
Yeah,
That could definitely be a campground.
except that it's really pretty low, but yeah.
do we have anything that's just agricultural?
Yeah,
We
well,
we have
single-family
single-family residential agriculture, which is a big difference than agricultural.
What's the Bakey farm?
Well, the
Bakey.
Bakey farm is under conservation, so they
Okay,
can't
yeah,
go campground
perfect.
there. So when you think about it, we've got some land off Mill, Cheney Mill,
What about the land behind Sumner's old place?
Yeah,
yeah.
Behind the chick, that's all been,
well, some of it's been placed under contract with some of these solar arrays, but I think there's still other lots out,
There's
there's still
100
other,
acres.
there's still
talking
other
about
lots out there that are
if you go
fairly
around
low.
Morning Dove, behind Morning Dove,
Yeah,
Behind
Yes.
Peasley Tavern, there's
It's
100 acres.
right?
yeah.
Yeah,
So that could be.
That
I
could
mean,
be.
That's not highest and best use of land in southern New Hampshire. A campground does not constitute highest and best use. But.
not when you can put 42 single-family homes on there.
Exactly. But it is big enough and it's undeveloped
Correct.
right now.
So that's probably in that neck of the woods.
campgrounds tend to need a body of water.
Well, that has no stream.
Oh, yeah,
No pond.
well, that's true,
It
yeah.
butts no
But
pond.
you're right, usually but
Not
now
always.
a lot of them just have a pool.
A lot of them just have.
There's a ton that just have pools now. And they make them play pools, they do, you know, they have features and stuff.
So what do we think the ordinances are, what do we think the zones are that we'd want? Rural residential?
And the other area really is in C1, where they've wanted to put all kinds of housing and things. But that's the only,
Yeah.
that's got a lot of acreage.
And C3 where they are now.
Oh, God,
Yeah.
Kingston, the golf course,
Oh,
Oh,
Kingston
yeah,
Fairways.
Kingston Fairways.
fairways. I mean, granted, there is somebody looking very intently for
For
that for
housing.
single family.
Yeah.
But right now, well, no, that's,
Is that rural residential?
no, that's rural
Rural
residential.
residential,
So we did rural residential and we did C1, and you have to do C3
yeah.
because that's
That's
where they are
that's where they already are.
And, but not C2 because,
Right, not C2.
no. So I would think rural residential C1 and 3. And even then, it's not the highest and best use for
Yeah, I was
any of
gonna
those.
say,
That's the whole
So the
thing.
chances of it locating there are slim.
Where it's very likely that two of the ones we've talked about are going to be residentially developed in the next year and a half.
Yeah.
And to develop the infrastructure, you know, the septic systems and the
Yeah.
pumping tanks and, you know, the
Yeah, it's
electrical
very-
hookups, and
very
this,
expensive to
it
do
is,
now.
it's,
But the onus would be on them, it would be an allowed use if somebody wanted to undertake it.
Correct.
So do we have How do we feel about rural residential C1 and 3 and incorporate that in the changes? Okay.
Let's see, what else did they ask us?
And I do wanna, I mean, I do wanna look at it, Chris.
Yeah, I think we just need some more time, I mean,
Literally read it before the
Yeah.
meeting started tonight.
and I appreciate her getting it to us
Yeah, me
so
too,
timely,
right.
because, I just explained that, you know, this was obviously a time-sensitive issue.
Well, if they want to make it, if we want to get it
Yeah.
That
on the
Robin's
warrant.
pretty good at what she does, you know.
What?
That Robin is pretty good at what she does.
Very good. She was very good at expediting this. You know what? Yeah. Okay. Not bad, people.
Not bad.
Okay, we've done one, we've done two. We have a motion to accept the minutes as presented tonight.
So moved.
I'll second that.
Any
Do
errors?
you
or
mind
omissions?
if I sneak out of here? Is that okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks.
Okay, so for correspondence. Correspondence, we have something from Dennis. And Dennis is referring to Kingston Industrial Park. Did everybody have a chance to read that before
Yeah.
the meeting? He has been to the site and has observed, he's got a whole list here of all of his observations. And at the completion of this, he said with these changes, he recommends the bond money amount be released, but that the final remaining bond be no lower than $5,421.38. So we would need a motion to release from the bond $8,143.88.
So moved. Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
I was interested that it seemed like deja vu from years ago, but there's still piles of material on the abutting property.
Okay, and then we have invoices. Yes, somewhere.
Not everyone has a copy.
Okay, so the invoices are from Civil Construction Management, project, bond review report, emailed to town, received plans and documents, downloaded, reviewed, and drafted the report, emailed the report to the town and the design engineer, 6 hours at $75 an hour for $450. Sounds okay with everyone?
Mm-hmm.
The Bashar ADU, I take it you'll be abstaining from this vote?
You don't even need to vote on these.
Okay.
It's really just information, it's really.
So.
Informational, if anyone.
$267 for the Bashar property. We have a bill for $442.50 for the snow site plan on New Boston Road. We have a bill for Sauhegan's site plan, $753. And we have a bill for Centerview Hollow Land on Smallpox Road for the sand pit for $375. Any objections to any of those? Seeing none, I will sign them all. Is there any other business to legally come before the board? See you all in 2 weeks? Or